Live from Pacific Junction Hotel, Girth Radio in session.
Hello and welcome, Ivan, to my Summer Lair. And I want to start off at the top when you got arrested for selling a Knicks t-shirt.
Yep.
All right. What was the story? What was the background of that incident?
All right. I'll try to give it in a concise version. I was a college student taking a screen printing class. I've been a lifelong Knicks fan. Isaiah Thomas, the head coach, was driving the team into the ground. And so I made a t-shirt that was imploring for the coach to be fired. It was kind of a clever design, and I did a print, put it online, and then I started getting emails from people that had somehow found it. I don't know how they did, but beauty of the internet. And they wanted to buy a shirt. And so then I thought maybe I should go to New York City where the Knicks play and sell the shirts outside of the stadium.
You're based in San Francisco, right?
I grew up in upstate New York, and I went to college near Rochester, New York. So that was my life then. So it wasn't inconceivable for me to drive down to the city. And I went to 3 games and sold out every game. So this was a product that people were really interested in. 4th game I went to, 3 cops were waiting for me, put me in handcuffs, took me to a holding cell in Midtown South Precinct for 3 hours, which is how long it takes for a basketball game to start and finish. And they let me out. And I called a couple of newspapers as soon as I got out, and the next day the front page of the New York Daily News had a big photo and story about the arrest, and I quickly made a website and sold hundreds more shirts online, and was interviewed on ESPN radio, and eventually that led to my first job in advertising. So I like to remind my parents that getting arrested led to my first professional job.
Cool. And do you feel it impacted the Knicks? Because they've been terrible. So more importantly, I'm grateful you got a job.
I hold no responsibility for the Knicks. Man, they can't do it. I was really hopeful Phil Jackson would do it, and
it's just not working out, eh?
It's been the only silver lining for me is, like you said, I'm based in the Bay now, and the Warriors are so damn good that I'm still a Knicks fan. I still, follow along very religiously, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that I now watch Warriors games, and at least I'm able to channel my passion for basketball into a team that's incredible
and doing good things. Yeah. But Porzingis is all right though.
He's great. I hope they get a good point guard in this draft, and I think they need to let go of Carmelo Anthony if they can now.
So I bring up the Knicks incident, A, just because it's basketball and that's fun, but also B, because this is kind of the beginning of your troublemaking, I guess. Is this how do you frame what it is you actually do? Did you consider it troublemaking?
I think I like that. I haven't said that, but I'd take that. I've thought of using creative provocateur.
That works too, yeah.
Yeah, culture jammer. I'm really interested in taking ideas and putting them out in the world and trying to have as big an impact as possible. And that t-shirt project is what kind of catalyzed me realizing that as a broke 21-year-old college student, I was able to create this viral campaign, get a lot of attention, publicity. And I realized there's no magic secret to putting something out into the world. You just do it. And not that every project or message is going to, spread to the masses. But, at this point, I've had probably 15 or so projects that have gone, what you'd call viral. And it's exciting, it's a high, and it feels cool in the same way that Banksy is really successful at making street art that spreads far and wide. I think it's important for all of us to figure out what we want to say in the world, what we want our voice to be, and then to say it in this, the same way that, you're hosting this radio show, and it's a channel for you to have a voice with the world.
Yeah, but it's also just giving people like yourself a platform, right? So that people kind of see and hear different perspectives.
Yep.
There's a lot of cool stuff that's happening out there, right? Yep. And like you said, you put the Knicks shirt up online and people find it. And that's the thing with the internet. Even with these interviews I do, I'm shocked at the different countries and places people find stuff. I'm like, what were you Googling? Or
yeah. You never know where something will go. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the magic of it.
And so how did culture jamming come into your life then? Because that seems to kind of be the bedrock or one of the foundations of your manifesto.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think in some ways growing up in a really conservative town and being a child of very hippie parents that deprived me of things like video games and TV and junk food, which is fine. It wasn't fine for me, but it's I understand what they were doing. But when you live in a town where you're the only kid that's being raised that way, and all of your peers, are living a more conventional lifestyle, it alienates you. And when you're the only Jewish kid in your entire town, that alienates you. And so I think from an early age, I became pretty familiar with like what it was like to feel like an outsider. And I think that drew me to eventually finding creative projects that, like street art to me is, I think most street artists are outsiders that feel like they don't fit into normal society. They want to find a way of having a voice. And so they're not going to ask for permission. They're just going to fucking do it. And so for me, it was in high school coming across the work of Banksy and Shepard Fairey that sort of empowered and inspired me to do that. And for a number of years, I did exclusively street art and stencil art, and that was a big interest of mine. I should also say my father's an artist, and having a creative influence like that doesn't hurt.
What kind of art did Dad do?
He does. He still works. He's 75 and goes into the studio every day. It's a wide range over his career, but he's best known for optically kinetic glass sculptures, but also does a lot of painting as well.
Does punk kind of influence anything you do at all? Because it's kind of very scrappy, if I can use that word. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, when you say punk, do you mean like the punk scene, punk music?
Just even the ethos too, of just kind of like getting up in like somebody's face and just kind of...
Totally, yeah. Punk ethos for sure. I mean, in high school, I had a subscription to Adbusters magazine, which is Canadian, and...
That's also the culture jamming thing too. They were big on that for a while.
Totally. That's where I appropriated the word from. Callie Lawson, the creator of Adbusters. When I graduated college, I interviewed at their headquarters trying to get a job.
No luck?
They didn't have any openings, and they actually told me I should get a job at a big commercial ad agency to learn from it and then get out. And that's kind of what I did.
The Radiohead model. Just get big on EMI, then leave, and then do your own projects.
Totally. But yeah, I mean, I think the punk mentality of just like, go fucking do it. Don't ask for permission. Don't, I think anyone can be an expert at anything they want to be now. The internet exists. It's non-hierarchical. Yeah, I'm all about the punk mentality.
How do you feel like you said, you already felt like an outsider. So in a sense for you, it wasn't that difficult. Like, I'm not going to fit in anyway, so I may as well just be like a quote unquote troublemaker. But then how do you like...
I still care what people think of me. I'm still very, to a fault, I'm very, very hyper aware of like what other people might think.
But that doesn't go away though. That's human nature though,
right?
Like it sucks not to fit in, but you still want to eventually fit in. Like, the line that I'm going with, or where I'm working towards, is like there's two kind of sides of this coin, right? One is like hypocrisy, one is like heresy. A lot of people tend to fear like heresy. They don't. That's the whole thing with like fitting in, right? They want to have like consensus, and they want to all like agree on one thing or whatever. But I always found like hypocrisy the worst one, because it's like to say something and then do something else. That's a bigger gap. I'm far more comfortable with heresy, right? And just kind of flipping the table and then kind of seeing where that goes.
Yep. I'm with you.
So you have these...
Wait, sorry. Can you define heresy?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Let's get into this.
How would you define that?
I was thinking of it as just when you recognize that the consensus or the agreed upon like statement or fact, like the earth is flat or something like that. A lot of people believe that back in the day, and that was pretty like wide ranging, and you'd flip off the edge and there'd be monsters, whatever. Yeah. But there's always that one or two brave souls who are like, I'm not really sure about this. I'm not sure if it's flat, but I don't think this kind of adds up. And it's just that beginning of that questioning, not necessarily putting it out there.
And that's how you define heresy.
Yeah. It's just that, like, just having those questions.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that term, but I mean, what that represents to me is everything. I think you have to question everything in life. The Buddha says, don't trust anyone, not even me, unless you know it to be true yourself.
Everything you know is a lie.
Yeah, and so this happens even with like health stuff. Right now I'm gluten free because the doctor told me that with this thyroid condition I have, it's helpful to not eat gluten, and I'm trying it out. But I also feel like in 50 years there's going to be a different thing for that, and so we're all a subject of circumstance. And I think Henry David Thoreau had a quote about how we all laugh at like the styles of old, but embrace so readily the current style. But like, the current style is going to be old in 10, 20 years. And if you apply that perspective to everything, you realize that not that we're all living a lie, but to question everything, because just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. And on a long enough timeline, if you look back on things that were considered illegal that are now accepted, you'll see that we're we're such a product of circumstance and conditioning that to not question it all, then you're just kind of denying yourself the possibility of truth.
Consensus is not validation, right? And like all of history is basically just people being wrong. It turned out the earth was round, right? That's all it is.
I trip up over like wondering what are we wrong about right now that we all.
Well, there's got to be so much, because I
So
mean,
much.
like people are using leeches for medicine. I'm like, that's dumb. Like, where'd you get that from? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's
People will figure out that scalpel knives and surgery are actually like the worst thing ever for some reason.
yeah.
I'm still waiting for like the cell phones in our pockets to have some direct correlation to some crazy
It's coming.
condition.
So you do all this stuff with the Knicks now. You kind of get out and you want to start doing some stuff. You even worked for a little while at Whedon and Kennedy, the big a lot of people know it from Nike, Levi's, and stuff like that. What kind of stuff were you doing with them, and what was that kind of experience like?
So I worked at Whedon Kennedy in their Amsterdam office, and it came at a time when I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do advertising anymore, and thought to me it was kind of the last. If I was going to continue working in advertising, it was going to be there. It was a dream job in many ways, living in Amsterdam. So I worked on stuff for Nokia, for Levi's, for Coca-Cola, and it was, for me, it was a split bag. In many ways, it was really sexy. There were outdoor patio concerts with famous bands that would come through. There was Keg, Heineken, Friday, surrounded by an incredible group of creative people from all around the world. And yet I wasn't satisfied, and I ultimately decided to quit and leave after just 5 months, which broke my agreement. I had to pay back my relocation allowances. It was a really big deal for me to break the contract. And I did that because a few of the projects that we were working on ended up just over a long period of time getting killed. And I felt like, and this was like working 7 days a week over and over again, just crazy deadlines. And I just felt like my time is worth more than this, and I want to be able to have more impact and autonomy or responsibility in the success of a project rather than letting 10 different layers. It's not a knock against Whedon Kennedy. It's more a knock against bureaucratic process, which is inevitable in any large organization or company.
Ben Stiller left Saturday Night Live after 4 weeks or 5 weeks. And it's the same thing. It's just like Saturday Night Live is fine. It's successful. It's big, like W&K and all that stuff. But it just like for what he wanted to do, what he was trying to, his talents, he knew who he was.
Yeah, it didn't work for him.
And it's just like 4 or 5 weeks. And you think like, well, you get a job at SNL and like you're in your 20s. Like that's
Wow,
it.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool to hear. And so a week after leaving that job, I started a project called Snail Mail My Email, where I invited anyone in the world to send me an email. I'd handwrite it and then send it to the recipient of their choosing for free. And it started as very much just an experiment, and it ended up really taking off, getting covered in Wall Street Journal, CNN, LA Times, ended up getting thousands of letter requests, forcing me to bring on a team of volunteer letter artists from around the world, which turned into a global movement.
And a book?
And a book, yep. Snail Mail My Email, you can get it on Amazon. And that project taught me a ton about the possibility of having an idea, putting it out there, and then you don't have to have it all figured out or solved beforehand. You can just react to it, and that month or so of time changed the course of my career. I was also dealing with like an incredibly painful breakup during that month, so it was just like so emotional and dramatic, and it was like moving back from Amsterdam to the States and leaving this job and being done with this relationship. So it was helpful to have a win in there. Sometimes I wonder if I would have had as much success with that project. We ended up sending 30,000 letters across the world.
It's amazing.
With 9,000 volunteers, and I don't know if that would have happened had I not been like heartbroken and like kind of lost in some ways.
There's a value to being uncomfortable. I think sometimes like you could still work at a big ad agency and make a lot of money and like you said, like work for Levi's, Nokia, all these companies, and it could quote unquote be fine. But it doesn't necessarily mean that like you're just comfortable. And it's sometimes this goes back again to the punk ethos.
Yeah.
Right? Where you need to be a little bit uncomfortable to kind of get stuff done.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. I also don't hate on comfort. I mean, I aspire to be successful and comfortable, and I look at people like Shepard Fairey and Banksy that are now, Banksy's work is selling for millions of dollars. Shepard Fairey has passive income through a clothing line, and I respect and admire it. I don't look at them as sellouts. I look at them as artists that have been able to figure it out and sustain themselves. And so I have my own private practice and do work with brands, but I wouldn't be satisfied if that was the only way I spent my time. It's important for me to engage on independent projects that have a higher calling than affecting a brand's bottom line.
How are you gauging then success for these like these projects that like you're talking about, like the passenger project, snail my email, like what is, how are you defining success for those things? Or do you even define success for them? Or
success for me is being inspired to create something and then following through on it. And I try to leave it at that. Of course, I have hopes and dreams and wild wishes. I want every project.
Rent.
Sorry?
And rent.
Correct. I mean, none of my independent projects, though, am I doing to get paid. I mean, they don't hurt in, maybe giving me a little bit of cachet or helping spread the word about me as an artist and creative director. But the projects themselves are really done to just scratch a creative itch. And I guess success for me is putting it out there in the world. And then when and if they resonate with a lot of people, if they get lots of engagement or participation, that's a bonus. And it's a great bonus. It's a high. It's a drug. It strokes my ego. It's great. But I do tons of projects that we're not going to talk about right now that, many people would consider a failure. But for me, there's a late designer, Tibor Kalman, that has a quote, "Everything is an experiment." And I try to live life that way and really see it all as an experiment.
You ended your FITC talk about that, just going through some of your failures and things that just didn't, they were like, I guess half baked. You pulled them out of the oven before or whatever, however you describe it.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's important to show that all too often. I'm guilty of this myself in a presentation or a talk. You only show the hits. You only show the things that worked out wildly. You're not showing the time where you spent a month working on a project or 2 months or 3 months and then it launched and no one, saw it or cared about it. And then you stayed in bed for a couple of days depressed and, you don't talk about the therapy appointments or the downward spirals.
Jay-Z's never mentioned the business that fails in his lyrics.
Huh.
And he's had a 40/40 club close, a number of business deals that didn't work out or didn't fizzled out. Like, it's just the normal.
Yeah. Well, it's not as sexy. It doesn't serve, one's agenda to do that. But I also think there's something powerful in being vulnerable and being like, yeah, not everything works out and I'm human. And, I feel like the older I get, the more I respect people that show their flaws and I trust them more too.
Well, maybe his next album then, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see if he gets the vulnerable album and just puts it all on the table.
Totally.
You mentioned part of success is just getting the idea and kind of executing it. But that's where I think a lot of people get stuck because they start going through that list where I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if people are going to like this or something like snail my email. There's nothing about it that would necessarily shout out that this would work or
Sure. And I had a number of people saying, what are you going to do if it does blow up and people, if 1,000 people reach out to you, which happened, how are you going to fulfill that demand? And I didn't know. And I just said, I'll figure it out if that happens. I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself. So I agree that I think all too often, and I see this with students of mine, they find reasons why it's not going to work. Or oftentimes they'll share the idea with a friend and the friend will say, oh, that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. The friend doesn't know. But everyone's a critic, and it's easier sometimes to, expect something to fail or figure out metrics or ways of comparing it to another project that has been done before rather than to, sort of imagine or vision into what are the possibilities? What could it be? And so my advice to anyone listening that has an idea they're excited about is what's the minimal viable product? It's a tech term.
The lean startup.
Yeah. How can you apply that to your creative idea? And then if it hits, you can expand on that. I don't think we live in an era anymore where everything needs to be perfect before it's presented. You can present yourself with your pants down a little bit. And
There's grace.
Yeah. I think that can be valuable.
Does the opposite also happen too, where people just have an idea and they think this is going to be the greatest thing ever and it's going to take down Facebook and Google all in 1 week? The hubris?
I'm sure it does. I'm confident that I have worked on projects that I felt that way about. And, I try, I'm now guilty of being, how do I phrase this? If I'm about to go on an incredible vacation and someone's like, are you excited? I'm like, no, I'm not excited. Because I just want to keep expectations really low. That way I can only be excited and not disappointed. But I think I'd like to be somewhere in the middle there.
But part of that, keeping the expectations low on a vacation, isn't that part of the element of surprise? You want to go out and be surprised. And isn't that kind of mirroring what your work does? Because your work is similar to like magic. You go to a magic show and you kind of know they're going to saw the lady in half and a couple of other things. But then they do a couple of tricks where like, yo, how'd that dude do that? Like, where did that quarter come from? And like...
Totally. And in Buddhism or Zen, they talk about beginner's mind and the value of when you're coming into something without knowing anything is actually like an ideal state of mind because, you're open to it all. Speaking of magic, I just saw an amazing performance in New York called In and of Itself. I just want to give a shout out to that performance. It fucking blew my mind. It took every variable in the context of an off-Broadway performance and flipped it on its head. So at the end of it, you question every single part of the experience. So if anyone listening is in New York, I strongly recommend that.
That's the point of magic, though, isn't it? Is to make you question. Because you were saying before, like, you're working at a big agency, you're doing 7 days a week, you have deadlines, whatever. There's not a lot of room in that schedule for, like, awe and wonder and magic and surprise.
Right.
And you can't always necessarily schedule those things. You kind of need to just go down some random alleyways.
Yeah. I mean, that could get us started on, current state of affairs in the world in terms of technology and how we live in such a fast-paced world where we're constantly able to check updates and get buzzes in our pocket for one of many notifications that I wonder about what we're losing from that. And, for sure, being constantly connected has its upsides, 100%. But I do wonder if we are deprived of that wonder and awe. And I often will try and remind myself to slow down and do simple things like sleeping with my phone outside of the bedroom, or when I land on an airplane, not checking in immediately and just kind of like chilling and feeling my body and reflecting.
Yeah, being self-aware is rare almost now. And I think it's kind of like one of those things where like it's like when you're driving and then you misinterpret what the red light means, what the yellow light means. Like you see all these signals all the time and you don't either see them or interpret them properly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening below the surface that if you're busy with your head down all the time, going from point A to point B constantly, you're just going to miss it. I mean, sorry, one last point.
Yeah, go.
One of my favorite assignments that I'll have my students do, or when I lead workshops at companies, I'll often have them do this, is to just go outside to a crowded intersection, and I'll just have people stand there and do nothing for 10 minutes and just observe what's happening with human behavior and what are the social dynamics at play and where are their tensions, where are their emotional moments, and it's a powerful, powerful exercise.
One of the other ones I want to talk about, one of the other projects that you've done is the passenger project. This was really unusual, and I don't know if I would, I don't know how I felt about it. Like, break it down what it is, and then we'll get into it a little bit.
Yeah. So the passenger project was inspired by a wedding I went to in New Mexico, and, it was one of those weddings where it just felt like everyone came together, and there was unity and connection, and it was in quite contrast when I flew back to the Bay, and on an airplane, I was still kind of in that place of connection, but of course I'm flying and everyone's doing their own thing as we all are normally on an airplane. And it just got me thinking a little bit about what it means to be in a plane in this day and age. It's this miraculous technology, and yet how do you feel when you fly normally?
I'm in my bubble. Like, don't talk to me. It's like when you drive through the hood, you don't make eye contact. You don't acknowledge anybody.
Totally. And so, and I respect that. And I'm always curious about where is there room for human connection, especially, I think that we're deprived of face-to-face connection. And so the Passenger Project is a series of surveys that I created. And when I fly now, not on every flight, but pretty often, I'll pass around one of those surveys on a clipboard with a pen. And it just asks a very simple prompt from each passenger aboard the flight. So it could just be, fill in an empty space based on a surrounding space, or it could ask one to fill out what their hopelessly ambitious dream is, or to draw an item from their luggage. So really basic prompts. I'm not asking for much, but what they do have to do is then pass it to the person next to them or to the aisle or row in front or behind them.
Yeah, that's what gets me.
That's the awkward part. That's where people are a little bit cautious. And, speaking of failure and experimentation, I'd say 50% of the time the project doesn't go through all the way because someone's not comfortable or the flight attendant yells at me because it's not, sanctioned. And I'm totally okay with that. And I'm not necessarily comfortable starting it every time. I have to really dig deep inside of myself. But I think there's that coffee mug, do one thing every day that scares you. I guess it's a quote before it was a coffee mug. But growing up, we had that.
That should be a T-shirt.
And I think about that. And I think it's important to break out of our comfort zones and to do things that challenge us a little bit. And so that is that for me. And it's fun to get people's reactions. And ultimately, when it does successfully go through the plane, what I then get back is this unique work of art, which is a collaboration between every passenger aboard the flight.
Yeah, you had some really cool ones in the video. Like, I like the outcome. I just don't like the work towards the outcome.
Sure. Well, you can't.
I know.
They go together. They're a package deal.
It's like you like the movie, right? But you don't want to sit there making it for like 6 months and then doing take 2, take 3.
But yeah, I like that project, and I don't know of any other projects that are creating art on an airplane with your fellow passengers. So it's kind of a fun convention to fuck with. Actually, I've been approached by a couple of big companies wanting to like implement that and use it, but they all came about it like in the wrong way, and so I'm trying to protect it until the right collaboration comes along.
That's valid because it's like when something is kind of like small or kind of like I guess we're going back to like the punk ethos where you're kind of just doing it yourself and kind of figuring it out. It's hard for like a bigger company or company who wants to put some money or some time into it to kind of like make it scalable. It's not necessarily scalable. Like, I don't know, like from being from New York City, the Chris Gethard show? He's like late night. He was on the MNN network, and
I don't know that I do.
And anyways, but yeah, he had it was like a really low budget show, and Comedy Central and a couple other ones really liked it, and they wanted to put money into it. But the problem was the more money they put into it,
it got diluted.
Yeah, and it just wouldn't work.
It's a funny thing how money and having more and more decision makers and approvals can very oftentimes dilute the merit of a creative product or content piece. I mean, it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about because, as we discussed, I enjoy living comfortably, and that's important to me. And so that with that comes compromising. My dad's a fine artist that has never compromised in his life. And, that has financial instability in it. And I want a more stable life in that sense. And the challenge becomes how to do creative projects when you're collaborating with a company that has hundreds or thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of employees and, lots of decision makers that all want to have their fingerprint in some way or don't want to get fired. And so they're protecting their job by, making sure nothing is controversial at all. I mean, I did a project called Selfless Portraits where strangers across the world drew each other's Facebook profile photos. And it originally was an idea for Facebook that they hired me to come up with that with an artist and good friend, Jeff Greenspan. And Facebook ultimately didn't want to do it because it was too much of they wanted to just be agnostic content company, but we talked to a number of really big brands. They all loved it, and they all had the same set of concerns of what if people don't participate? What if someone draws an inappropriate picture? What if someone doesn't like their picture? And they got lost in the weeds and couldn't see it for its bigger picture. And so we ended up making it independently, spent a year creating this project, and it was incredibly successful, over 50,000 portraits drawn, really beautiful portraits. And by and large, maybe we had like 2 people that drew a penis instead of someone's face, and I can live with that. And I think that it takes a lot of trust and you have to use your imagination and vision to believe in something rather than getting caught up in why it might not work. And that can be a challenge in working with bigger organizations.
And for your organization, you work with, I guess you kind of work independent. You have your own studio. You have a couple of different kind of organization arms, or like, how do you break it down? What is it you do?
I do a lot of things. I've got a creative studio that focuses on creative direction and ideation. We do content strategy, social activation, and film direction. And so I partner with a production company out of New York and Brooklyn and Los Angeles called Missing Pieces. And I specifically chose them because they are incredibly multidisciplinary as well. So I'm represented by them as a digital, experiential, and virtual reality director, as well as live action. And my whole thing is like, I don't want to be the commercial production world is very much, I've had conversations with production companies where they're like, what's your box that you're going to fit into? We have a director who's the baby director, and all of his films have babies in them. And that's his thing. What do you want? What's your baby? And I don't want to have a baby. I want to being able to have the freedom to, do lots of creative challenges and opportunities. So Missing Pieces is great for that. And then with my company, it's me and an assistant, and then I keep overhead really minimal. And, I've hired 25 people at a time for a Toyota project that I directed that came through my company, but it's all freelance. And I'm very interested in being selective with projects that come in and then scaling back down so I can have ultimately it's about being independent and having the freedom to have choice versus being a company that has a holding company and suddenly you're not actually able to be independent, which is the reason one might have started their own thing in the first place. And
risks too, right? The freedom, when you're that nimble, you can be more risky. And if something doesn't quite work out or whatever, like, oh, well.
Yeah. Yeah. I never want to do the same thing over and over again. I want there to be variables. I want there to be new challenges, new problems. I don't want it to feel safe and expected. So yeah, risk is something I enjoy doing, and it can be big. The bigger of a company you work with, the more risk averse they are. And so that is to say, I'm always appreciative when I'm able to have collaborations with people or organizations that understand that risk is an inherent part of a creative project and are able to embrace it and trust in that. And that's always when I found the best, strongest projects have come out as far as my collaborations with a brand. Just one I'll share with you is with a brand called Silent Circle. And this was with an agency chapter. And essentially they make this phone called the Black Phone. It's the most secure smartphone in the world. And essentially for them to sell more product, they realized they just needed to raise awareness about data privacy. Have you seen Citizen 4, the Edward Snowden doc?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She has a new one coming out on Julian Assange.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to checking it out.
Yeah. I'll tweet you out and then you can
So I just watched this Edward Snowden doc, obviously had a big impact, was really shaken up about it, wanting to do something. And this opportunity came up. And what we realized was, in order to raise awareness about data privacy, we just had to ask people to read their app permissions out loud. And so I just went around San Francisco for 3 straight days talking to all different kinds of people, asking them to do that. And their responses were like shocked, and they just gave such incredible reactions. And so our film was just a montage of that, and it spoke way louder than like a overly produced bunch of actors, doing something could ever convey.
Or just even somebody on Twitter and like, this is bad, right? Hashtag awful.
Yep, totally.
Last question. When you do these kind of talks like at FITC and other things, we're in Barcelona recently. When you do these talks, what kind of, is there a consistent theme of like what people come up to you and talk to you about afterwards? Is it the fear? Is it the risk? Is it like, have you noticed any sort of similarities?
I think everyone's got their own kind of angle. I think it depends who they are. If it's a student, students usually have one kind of question, which is like, okay, a lot of times people will want an answer on like, what next step should I take? Is it to work for a bigger company or to go freelance? And then people that have more experience might be curious about, okay, well, these independent projects are great, but like, how do you support yourself and what's your business model? And then other people still, to your point, are just interested in the more like overarching themes of risk taking and how to get creative projects off the ground. So it runs the gamut. I don't have like a one, theme necessarily, which I like. I like having, I like getting feedback that ranges and is diverse.
Where can people find you online?
In a lot of places, on all the social media channels, it's Cash Studios or Cash_Studios. And then, I have cashstudios.co is my creative studio. And then my personal site is ivan.cash. They just released a a .cache, and I was quick to snag that. So
Nice.
Well,
Well,
.cache.
that's easy for you. Can you talk about anything that you have coming up, some similar to this passenger project or Snail Email? Do you have something going to be released anytime soon? Or
Yeah, I can talk about one project. It's actually a documentary film, but the theme is very similar to those projects you just mentioned in that it's it's this gentleman that I met commuting, actually, and he works at the San Francisco subway. It's called BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit, and he's someone that caught my eye because he makes a point to interact with every single person coming through the aisle or through the gates. And he is genuinely warm. He high fives or fist bumps, or people he knows well, he hugs. And after commuting a number of times, I was like, who the hell is this guy? And what is his story that he's so friendly? Like no one, and it feels genuine.
like I said, don't make eye contact. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, there's different lanes, so it's not like you have to go through his lane, but people will line up to go through and to just interact with him because he's so giving and generous and just friendly. And so I have sat down with him now a number of times to interview him, and we have a shoot coming up, and I'm really excited to show his story. I feel like from doing all of these different interactive projects that connect people, I found that ironically, there can be a disconnect between me, the project creator, and all the people that are participating. And doing a documentary, which is more of a one-on-one interaction, kind of like a radio interview, to me, that's a very rewarding experience versus putting something out and having it be more digital.
Warriors taking it this year?
Without a doubt. I hope they have some good competition, but right now at the Western Conference, the Spurs are tied with Memphis. They're up 3-0 on the Blazers.
Spurs are always a little dangerous, though.
I think the Spurs are their biggest competition. OKC just got a game against Houston.
They're not a threat, though.
Yeah, I'm thinking. And then the East Coast, it feels pretty soft too. I think the Cavs will continue their momentum. Who else do we have on the East Coast?
That's it.
I feel bad for Toronto, man. I'm sorry.
They can't get it done. No, man. Don't feel bad. It's show business, not show friends. They can't get it done.
Yeah, I'm rooting for them though. They're down 1-2 right now. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just bad game. Like they just play poorly every time in the playoffs. Like consistently play. You know what I mean?
Hey, at least you're making the playoffs.
That's true. Yeah. As long-suffering Knicks fan, I know. And we gotta get the Knicks back on track. Really, like the NBA needs it. Like it's just they've had some glory years and stuff with the Ewing and all those guys, right? So
and the '99 Latrell Sprewell, Larry Johnson, Allen Houston.
Yeah,
they made it to the finals that year.
All right. Thank you, Ivan, for like talking about like projects and creativity and like challenging and risk and Buddha. And we covered a lot actually. Shepherd Ferry, Banksy, like we covered quite a bit.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Good questions. You're on it. I'm impressed.
Oh, okay. Now we got to end on a high note. Thank you.
Yeah.